Hi, I'm Charles. I run a music school and teach guitar in the Seattle area. I've taught about 60,000 guitar lessons since 1991, and I teach both in person here at music school and online as well with people all over the country. So, this is a video series whose purpose is to talk about all the forms of music notation that might be valuable to guitar players of any skill level, but the eventual agenda is to show why tab is not always the best way to write and read music. So we're going to get to that a little bit later, but the basic philosophy is that different forms of music notation are like different tools, so you want to pick the right tool for the job. So tab is not always that tool depending. It's a very, very, very useful tool for certain things, and if I was to advocate learning other forms of notation, it's purely from a pragmatic perspective. It's not because a traditional music teacher thinks that you should, or because that's what guitar players did in the past. It's purely a matter of getting you to learn the most about your instrument, conquer material quickly, understand music theory better. So you want to use the form of notation that helps you with a given task to achieve those goals. And it's kind of like, like you don't want to attack a screw with a hammer, so tab may not be the best thing for everything. This is my writing glove because I'm going to be writing on my tablet PC over here, and this keeps me from drawing inadvertent weird symbols. And I will put screenshots from what I'm writing into the video so you can see what I'm writing. So today's video is really more to talk about what those forms of notation are so we can review them and evaluate them in coming videos. So, of course, first one is tab. Stands for tablature. It's the default magazine, internet, person-to-person way for guitarists to communicate what to play aside from just demonstration. I think there's some reasons why it's become so much the default, but let's kind of talk about what it is. So I'm writing 6 horizontal lines here. If you're one of my online students, you know that it's really more like wavy horizontal lines. But tab, each line represents a string. The one thing it does share with regular music is the heavier sounding, or the lower sounding notes are on the bottom, which is kind of the opposite way of how you look at a guitar when you hold it. So I often draw this funny little graphic for kids in particular. Guy's nose, hair being blown back by the awesome licks being played on the guitar. But it kind of shows how you're looking down on the tab from underneath it, because it's kind of upside down. But the heaviest or 6th string is the bottom line. The top line is the skinniest string, so in regular music notation, higher notes are toward the ceiling, lower notes are below, and tab is similar in that way, but there's no other relationship. It's pretty easy to figure out what to do when you see tab because you can explain how to read it in one step. So it's basically an XY axis. The line, horizontal line is what string you're on, and then if you see a number on a string, like I just wrote a 2 on the 5th string, that's what fret you play. It doesn't tell you what finger to use, it just tells you we want to hear a note on that particular string at the 2nd fret. A 0 is an open string, and then 2 notes on top of each other in a vertical array are a chord. So that's a 2-string chord I just wrote. So it's pretty easy to explain this quickly. You don't need to know music theory, you don't need to know letters. The other reason I think it became so prevalent with the dissemination of music on the internet is that you could create tab just by using a computer keyboard. So dashes were often used for lines. You would put the number of the fret in between the dashes, and you still see a lot of this type of what I call typewriter tab on the internet. Now, there are other things you can do with tab, so we're going to kind of evolve this a bit. I often try to do this for students as soon as I can apprehend like the rhythm for something. You don't have to just write what fret you're playing. You could write a phrase like this, write one here, and you can actually put rhythmic symbols borrowed from regular music notation on top of the tab. So this is what you see when you go to Guitar Pro, which is a software, or the new online version that's really popular is Songster with 2 R's. In these type of tabs, you're seeing not only the rhythmic notation attached to the numbers for frets, which is put there in part for your benefit in reading it, in part so that the program can play back the information in time as like a MIDI recording. But you also see a lot of like multi-layered tabs where like you might be looking at one guitar part, but then you click on a button and it shows you another simultaneous guitar part. So let's talk about some of the other forms. So if you're looking online for music, certainly if you search up a song, you'll see a lot of guitar tab. That tends to be more prevalent if it's like a riff-based, melody-based song, hard rock song. But the other big thing is what I call chords and lyrics. So if you're looking up a song that's more like a strummed acoustic guitar thing, you see a lot of times the lyrics, maybe borrowed from whatever lyric site, and then little chord symbols put on top of that. This is actually super valuable because, if you are trying to play a song that goes G, D, C, like I'm writing on the tablet here, it's a lot easier to look at those three letters than it is to look at a tab representation. I'm going to show you what the G looks like. In tab, the G is 6 numbers on top of each other. Doesn't really look like anything when you first look at it unless you read it off a lot of tab. So for certain, this is kind of a little hint that for certain tasks at hand, like communicating how to play a strummy acoustic guitar song, tab is going to be really complicated looking. So I'm crossing that out. I've just got my chord symbols. The problem, of course, is this now is a two-step process. You see the chord name, G, but if you don't know a G, you have to go look it up. The tab doesn't immediately tell you how to play it on that screen. But I think a lot of people who do a lot of vocal-based accompaniment, playing guitar for themselves, singing songs, covers, they don't want to see the tab, they just want to see these. So I think it's another thing you can look for. It's another form of notation. I guess you could call it chords and lyrics notation. The only problem we see with it is it doesn't really tell you how to strum. So that's one of the things that's kind of a bit of information you have to communicate somewhere else on the same piece of paper, or is just missing. Like a lot of students come to me and they say, okay, yeah, those are the chords, but I can't make it sound right. I don't know how to strum it. So from a studio guitarist, guitar teacher, former music school student perspective, chord charting is the thing that gets you past that. So it's like a third form of notation. So chord charting would be, you kind of usually throw out the lyrics, and then you just go with the chord name, and then you try to separate the chords into bars where you can tell the student or yourself, how am I going to strum this? So most music's in 4/4, so usually these measures here are 4 beats, and in that beat I can use these various symbols, or in that measure I can use various symbols to tell you how to strum. I'm not going to explain all these symbols right now because that's not really the purpose of this video, but they are symbols that are borrowed from regular music notation, but now they're being applied to chords. So compare, like a regular music note would be like a little circle stem. What we're doing in chord charting notation is we're turning circles into slashes or open circles into diamonds, but it's still communicating rhythm. So now I know that I'm supposed to play the G chord there with 4 strums, 1 beat each. I can add arrows to that if I want to make it really clear to the next person to read this piece of music that they are strumming a certain direction, but I don't have to. The rhythm is what's really being communicated. Then I could have the second measure here have a D chord, so it means switch chords, and then this is a longer note, so I'm going to strum that one, and then it holds. Again, I don't have to add these extra notations down here for it to be qualified as a chord chart. I'm just doing it to be extra clear. This is what I use a lot with rock band classes, or when I'm writing myself a chart for a studio project that I'm going to be doing. A lot of people have this, I think this idea that it's either tab or you read dots on the staff, but there are a lot of other things in between, and I think this chord charting is one of those in-between kind of things. But let's go to number 4, which is, hey, regular music notation. Most used in the guitar world by classical guitarists. But this is where it gets a little bit more confusing, and this is often the kind of the hump that guitar players don't get over. But this is what's great about music notation, is the system that's used by all musicians, so it's not instrument specific, and that's one of the reasons why you might want to learn it. We'll get into that more later. But this system is just a series of dots to represent pitch. So like tab, the up and down axis here is pitch. But the lines are not strings, because this is universal to all musicians. The lines are really kind of arbitrary, but they're not strings. So it does not share that with tab. And these dots represent a certain pitch. So you would have to figure out where that pitch is on your guitar. Like I say, I'll get into that more later, but I have to give credit to a former GIT teacher, Charlie Fector, for coming up with, I hope I got his name right, the rather amusing designation of these as golf clubs on fences. So to make the kids laugh, I often refer them to like, hey, let's work on your golf clubs. So that's something that in a future video I will show you how to interpret better for guitar and why it's problematic for guitar and how we can get over those humps. I think that it's just good to know it's out there, and it's good to know there are many guitarists that can read this. Actually, you can also, I'll call this 4B, you can blend this form of notation with chord charting. So I can draw my lines from my chord charts. I can draw a scaff through that, the scaff being this designation of up and down pitch here. Great lines, gotta love it. I can draw some strums, so if the first bar has chords, I can say, hey, strum the G chord 4 times. And then I can write a little melody line here that then constitutes the next part of the guitar part. So if the guitar part has some melody lines or riffs combined with chords, I can put these two forms of notation together into something that's very specific. Yes, you can also do this with tab. Like in this example, if I wanted to make this tab, whoops, the Microsoft whiteboard sometimes does not like my hands. So I'm just going to put the same example in tab to show you what it would look like. The problem is for my chords, I have to stack up all these numbers multiple times. So certainly knowing your basic chords by name and not having to do this with them is really helpful. So there's bar 1 now in tab. And then because I know how to read music, I could be like, okay, I'm going to find a place to play this idea here. And there's the second bar. I did make a decision on the second bar of where to play that on the fretboard. There might be more than one answer to that. So then, having gone through, those are like the main forms. These are some kind of other things I've come up with over time. And the reason why I think these are helpful is, again, we're trying to develop an arsenal of tools, each tool being a different form of notation. It helps us communicate an idea with the least amount of hassle or the greatest amount of clarity. So I actually like this one for picking patterns. So let's say you have a finger pick song. You can write the chord name up top. You could write a line of like string designations. So this would say, hey, play a G chord with the left hand, but with the right hand we're going to pick string 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2 to make a pattern. I can attach a rhythm to this or not, don't have to either way. But instead of writing that with notes that are really hard to read or with tab that's really unwieldy looking, I know where my left hand goes. I don't need any more information about the left hand. So the right hand is given a job by these numbers here to play 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, and that's all the information I need. So there it is. So this is like a string picking notation. Just recently with a student, we came up with another way of doing this, which is you use the tab lines, but instead of showing all the numbers for all the different hits of the chord, you can actually do this. What's kind of cool is I've taught a lot of lessons, and this is the first time that I've thought of doing this, but it came out with a conversation with a student. Thought it was pretty brilliant, because you don't really need the numbers there. You know where the numbers are because you know your left hand's on a G, so all the X's is just tell you what string to play, but using a tab kind of grid instead of a number grid. I thought that was pretty cool. Here's another one I use in writing things for rock bands. I'll put my tab lines in here, but this is what I call letter tab. So instead of using numbers, I actually put letters down here because I know that you can play this riff with like A, B, C on the 5th string and D, E, F on the 4th string. You might say, well, what's the point of that if I don't know my names? Yes, you do. This does encourage people to start learning the names of notes on their fretboard, but it's still a little more direct than the symbols that are in the golf club system. And what's really great about it is if I'm writing this riff primarily for like a bass player and guitarist, a keyboard player in the same band can look at that and go, okay, I can probably figure that out because they're giving me the letters for it, not just a bunch of cryptic numbers. So this letter tab thing I think is really useful, even though I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do it other than me. But it's kind of a cool way to like tell a keyboard player this is the melody notes for playing, but tell a guitarist this is at least close to where you find them. Like I know they're on the string, you still have to do the work of figuring out the notes on the string. But I also think finding the notes up and down each string is the first step in understanding music theory for guitar, even long before trying to read the golf clubs on the staff. Knowing your letter names as you look at the fretboard is really valuable. So if you're already working on that, then this form of letter tab would start helping you bridge the gap kind of between using only tab and using regular music notation. So now I'm sitting here going, are there any other things that I have used? Oh, really obvious one. chord frames. These are usually in conjunction with something else, but you can convey an awful lot with pictures. So these are horizontal boxes. They're not turned, again, not the way you hold a guitar. In this situation, my little dude with this funny face, he's on the left here looking down on it. But this is the frets are the horizontal axis. The strings are now the vertical axis. And I can draw chords with this. We've all seen if you play guitar at all, you've seen these chord forms like that. But this is what you would put like in a chord chart if you're going to throw a chord in there that has an unfamiliar voicing. Like, let's say you're like, yeah, I want G, but... So by writing that, with the 3 being the Roman numeral for the fret on which the box or the frame is positioned, I can tell the person I really want this specific G. You also can show, using colors and so forth, some interesting motion. Like if I wanted them to play G, but like take a finger on and off of that note that's represented by the raspberry colored X there, I can communicate that maybe with a picture instead of tab. And if the person's got some intuitive skills, they go, okay, I can kind of see how that would match the music that I'm hearing without needing a big tab explanation of that. So you can take chord frames pretty far. You can draw a longer one and show a whole bunch of like motion if you're doing like a cool little like 2-note string or 2-string note kind of thing. You might be able to show a series of chords with some different colors. By the way, I really love colors. I think it really helps to communicate things in charts. So this is showing that I'm playing 3 dyads or 3 double stops in a row. Play the top raspberry one first, the blue one's next, the next raspberry one's last. I've actually shown a lot of information there just with a picture of a chord frame instead of actually writing out all the individual things. So sometimes, like in the margin of a regular piece of music, this could be really helpful. I think I've covered all the possible ones that I use. I often, in writing these for rock bands, I often mix a whole bunch of them together. Maybe I'll throw up a screenshot of some examples of how I've mixed all these together. And initially, students look at it and go, whoa, but there's a lot of reasons why using all those notations together can convey something more efficiently and effectively once people have gotten past the initial hurdle of understanding. So I think that's it for this video, but check back in when I start talking a little bit more about when tab is useful and when really you should go beyond it and try something else. Thanks for watching.